We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. Today, we have Eric. Now, he was just on a little bit ago, but we wanted to get Eric back on just to have full disclosure. When you're listening to this, this is done pretty well in advance of the time you're hearing it, which is unusual for the podcast. Usually, I do it around midnight, and then you hear it that next day. Because I'm out of town, I'm trying to cover my ass a little bit, make sure the podcasts are there. That's not to say I won't add some additional podcasts, short podcasts, just to catch up on the news real time. But I want to make sure we have a podcast there. Yesterday was Ed. It's been a while since he's been back, so I'm sure that you'll like that show. And Eric is always has some great insights and perspectives. So I said, Eric, I need some help, and I need you to help me cover the week I'm gone. So Eric, you're here uh, into the future. It's actually Wednesday of next week, and we're sitting here on what, Friday night? Yeah, we're sitting here on Friday night.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, yeah, let's see how prophetic we can be here.
Yeah. Well, I want to give full disclosure. I try to be honest with the people. Um, let's see. How are things going with your TikTok? When you were last on, we talked about this new TikTok account you got. It's called Analytical Iowan, and I encourage people to check it out on TikTok. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. When we right before we did the last podcast, which was a little over a week ago from when they hear this, I was just under 400 followers. As of a little bit ago, I am knocking on the door of 800.
Nice. Remember what I told you: as you get more followers, it grows exponentially faster.
Yes, and I mean, and I probably would have been over 800. I have noticed a few things. Had to block a few accounts today. Something I wasn't doing earlier on, and like a couple of them would come in and spam like my videos. They'd hit 30 of them in 25 seconds,
Yeah.
and then you go check out the account, and then I start looking, and it's got stuff about Telegram on their profile, and it's like, nope, you're gone.
Yeah.
Just some of it seemed weird. I had a financial account start following me, and it's like, nope. They put made one financial comment on my account. I'm like, nope, you're gone. I'm not going to deal with that.
No, it's good. It's good to weed the garden early on because, or prune the shrubs, because you get the Trump pumpers or the scammers in there, and it gets to be a mess. It gets to be chaotic, and you're better off blocking them early on just to keep it clean and easier to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few Trump humpers. You know, if they ask an honest question, I leave them alone. Like I had somebody earlier today, I posted about the start of the trial. And he came in. The only thing he said was, "What's the crime?" So, okay, fine. I made another video. I talked about what the crimes he's being accused of are. If they're respectful, I don't care what your political party is. But you come in and like the one guy made a comment, "Oh, what you should do is shave off that rat nest on your face, put it on your head." Nope, you're gone.
Yeah, he's gone. Well, here's the first makes mistake you made, Eric, in TikToking, is somebody asked what you said was a reasonable question. So you give a logic, common sense answer, and you think that's going to go somewhere. It's going to go fucking nowhere. As soon as they give you a hint that they are a Trump pumper, I don't care what question they ask. Get rid of them. Just fucking get rid of them. They're not going to do you any good. You don't need the follow, and they're going to cause you nothing but problems.
Well, I don't think he followed me. He just left a comment and moved on. But I took the opportunity to turn it, I didn't link the comment in my TikTok at all. I just talked about it. Um, but I took the opportunity to make a video and just make more content explaining what these actual crimes are because I think this case gets lost a lot in the media. They talk about the hush money, and the crime isn't the hush money; it's
Right.
the cover up. It's how it was paid. Like we heard, you know, that Michael Cohen didn't or open the account, didn't say it was a um, political account. They called it legal fees. That Donald Trump had the NDAs and basically right after the election, within a month of the election. Well, if he was so worried about the family image, why aren't the NDAs still in effect? I mean, if it was me, I'd have those NDAs locked up for as long as I possibly could to make sure there was no issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been having my own little problem, ongoing problem with TikTok and the fucking goofballs on TikTok. I don't have as much trouble with the Trump humpers, although I did have a video taken down this past week, but I don't think it was a Trump humper. It was the radical left fucks because I happened to talk about the protests in this country regarding the Israeli Hamas war. And I don't typically talk about that on TikTok because that's a no-win situation. Don't even wade into that because no matter what you say, people are going to infer something else from what you said, and they're going to call you anti-Semitic. And the far left, in some ways, the far, far left. I don't disagree with some of the things they want, but some of them are just as radical as the right, and it gets difficult to deal with them. But anyway, I've got a bunch of people out there that have a variation on my name, use my picture, and use my videos and try to sell people crypto. Now, these motherfuckers have been reported literally dozens and dozens of times over the past several months. Followers have reported them. I reported them. In fact, I reported one today, the day I'm recording this, and he was clearly a fake. He was using my picture. I reported him to TikTok. I said, he is an imposter. He's portraying me. And they said there was no violation. However, then I get a violation to the creative beta program saying that my videos are not original. These fuckers are out there faking. So then they're coming to me and saying, you're not doing original stuff. We'll take you out of the creative beta program because you're not doing creative stuff. So then I have to write an appeal, say, this is bullshit. Here's why. Here's what's happening. Here's why you're not doing your job. And then they say, okay, yeah, you're right. But I've had to do that 4 times this week just to maintain my fucking videos. And I don't know how much more original I could be with my videos. I'm just really pissed off about this. I've almost had enough with TikTok because I'm just trying to do my shit. Just leave me the fuck alone. But TikTok, for my money, TikTok, if these guys are grifting people um, for uh, whatever kind of money scam they've got going, I look at TikTok. If they won't take these guys down, and these people are still trying to take advantage of other folks, I see TikTok as an accessory to a fucking crime.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I mean, I know those laws get a little murky, but they're not, they're not stopping. And I've seen a lot of creators complaining about this, that they can't get the bots stopped, they can't get the fakes stopped. I saw one creator, she does a lot of Disney content, was going back through um and re-recording a bunch of her stuff, some of her older stuff that they're starting to uh have issues with these other accounts taken down, with the fakes and stuff, because and then putting a watermark, her own watermark, into the video to prove it was hers. But I don't know if that's going to stop. But the copyright, whatever her name is, I don't remember what it is now. But they got to do something. I
Yeah, they
mean,
do.
I'm not for the TikTok ban, but if they sell it to somebody else, maybe at least whoever else they get in there will do something about this report. Like, we report and they do nothing. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fortunately, everything I have on TikTok and the podcast is on YouTube, where a lot of people are watching this now. So we've got a safety valve if something should happen with TikTok. Anyhow, um, we're in the middle of the week at this point when people are hearing this. Uh, at the point of where we're recording this, they just finished up the testimony with Hope Hicks. Um, in the Donald Trump criminal trial in the Manhattan district. And I got to tell you, we don't see the testimony, but from the reports I've gotten, there was some pretty devastating things handed to Donald Trump in that testimony.
Oh yeah, I definitely would agree. Um, she talked about at one point the quote that stuck out to me. They asked her at 2016 when she was working with the campaign, and the time of the scandals were coming out. What was the mindset? Was it on personal or whatever? And she said something about, yeah, he had some personal interest in the story, but everything was about the campaign.
Right. Right.
And that stood out that she straight up said on the stand, our focus was on the campaign basically first.
Well, the defense got a little time to cross examine her, and they got her to say a couple of things that I think they thought they were winning on. And one of the things is that she said that Donald Trump was concerned about Melania hearing about this, which is fine. I mean, it doesn't have to be either or. You can be concerned about both things, but if you're concerned about the election and you're doing this for the election, even if you were afraid of Melania finding out, it's still illegal. So that's not really anything that's going to get him off the hook. But she said, yeah, Donald was very conscious and wanted to make sure the newspapers didn't get to Melania so she would see this article. What, Melania doesn't watch fucking TV, doesn't have social media, doesn't have a smartphone? That's how stupid this guy is.
Oh yeah, but I had a different take. I mean, that whole thing is stupid that was his reasoning. My take on it was we know Donald Trump does read the paper. He
Right.
focuses on that. I think he didn't want the paper in his own face. He found a reasonable excuse. He didn't want to see it himself because he knew it was going to be bad for his own image and his ego. In his mind, he didn't want to read that negative story. So he's like, "Oh, it just won't show up today. It'll be fine."
Well, and you're onto something there too, because of his personality, his narcissistic personality. The one thing they hate is somebody shoving in their face something that shows they're a loser or they're wrong or they're guilty or they're culpable for something. They don't like it thrown in their face. They want in their own little minds to be able to um, disregard it. They don't want to see it. They don't want the reminder that they did something wrong because they have such a hard time admitting they're wrong. I mean, that's the last thing they will do as long as they don't see it, as far as they think it doesn't fucking exist.
Oh, exactly. So I think maybe that's what he did is he found a way to justify not bringing the paper in, by saying, well, we don't want Melania to see it. But then that way, it would solve his problem of knowing that the story was coming and he could ignore it
Right.
and then just move about his day. So maybe I'm not, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he did really care about what Melania thought, but she was going to get that story elsewhere.
Well, when they say, I'm worried about what Melania thought, this isn't like it's a first time deal. I'm sure there's plenty of stuff that Melania found out about because this guy is an absolute creep. I mean, if you're going around grabbing women by the genitals and kissing women at various events, I'm sure some of this stuff has gotten back to Melania. At this point, Melania is in it for the money. There's no love lost between these two fucking people. They're the coldest people there are, and they're just in an arrangement situation because it's beneficial to one another. I don't see any love story between these two.
No, I don't either. It's all about money. It's all about convenience. Um, if Donald Trump thought he could get away with it and not have it affect whatever prenup they have, I bet you he'd kick her to the curb at this point and move on to somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, I think he's going to have little trouble finding mistresses and girlfriends henceforth. He's not going to have a lot going for him. He's going to have no money. He's going to be a convicted felon, and everybody knows he has shitty diapers. So those aren't really high on the demand list of the ladies of today. And I'm not a lady, so I don't know that. I'm just supposing.
I think you're right. And as far as the no money goes, he paid the fine for the first violation of the gag order, the $9,000. But what
Right.
I thought interesting about it was he paid it with two separate cashier's checks. So it came out of I'm guessing came out of two different bank accounts. Are you
Really?
telling me this guy doesn't have $9,000 in one bank account that he could make it happen?
It reminds me of the old days when I didn't have money, and other people have experienced this too. Could I put this much on this card and this much on this card because you didn't have enough credit on it? I've been there, man. It's not fucking easy, but you
Me
do what you
too.
got to do. It's just ironic a billionaire would have to do that.
Oh yeah, but his supporters will never see that, never notice it. They'll find some way in their minds to excuse it away.
Right. Well, you've seen the pictures of him in court. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong here. This guy doesn't look like he's in a good place. This guy doesn't
No,
look like he's healthy. He doesn't look like his mind is in the right spot. It looks like he's flagging a bit.
I'd say more than a bit. He looks haggard. He looks exhausted. Um, and he probably is exhausted because I bet you most days he didn't get up before 10 or 11 in the morning, because he's up
Yeah.
all night tweeting and truthing and whatever, what have you. And, but this is hitting him in the face. He's struggling to stay awake. Um, he looks old. He looks weak, frail. He looks everything that he accused Joe Biden of being.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw somebody posted something, I think it was on TikTok, and it was pictures of Trump humpers. And this is how mentally deranged they are. They're wearing t-shirts that support Donald Trump wearing diapers. They've already owned up to the fact that, yeah, he wears diapers, and they're wearing these t-shirts that say real men wear diapers.
Uh, I didn't see that one. The one I saw, it said diapers over Democrats.
Wow. That's pretty bad when you start accepting and crowing about the one thing that is the most embarrassing to Donald Trump. You're accepting it. Even his own people accept it.
Oh yeah, they accept it. The thing is, I don't know how much of that Donald Trump even sees. Like he probably would
Yeah.
never see that image. His people will keep that from him unless he happens to be at a rally and somebody walks past him wearing that shirt. He'll never see it and never even know that they are, you know, saying that about him because he would be infuriated by that.
Yeah, yeah, he definitely would be infuriated by that. And that's something Howard Stern said about him. He knows Donald Trump. He's interviewed him a number of times. And Howard Stern, as much as said, is what people who support Donald Trump don't understand is that Donald Trump hates those kind of people. He sees them as trash. He sees them as lower than him. He's just taking in all their support, but he has complete disdain for the lower class people, people like Trumplafucks.
Oh, definitely. You and Old Soul touched on it. They are the first people he will step on. He's grifted them dry. You've heard of people putting up 2 and 3 mortgages on their house, you know,
Yeah.
sending every last cent they have to him, to the supposed billionaire. He's grifted them dry. He's taken away their constitutional rights. He's been the only president to come out and say, take the guns first, due process later. And then he would be more than willing to step on them first to get to the top.
Well, and
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 he
there,
killed them with COVID.
right, exactly. Well, and then there's the story of this guy. Everybody's supposed to feel sorry for him. And he's the guy that invested his entire retirement into the True Social stock. And of course, it dropped like a rock. He ended up losing $500,000. He sold it for less than he bought it for. And now he's whining and crying because he lost $500,000. His family won't talk to him. His life is destroyed. He's in his early 70s. And now he has to go back to work. I'm sorry. I have no sympathy for this dumb motherfucker. Not only because he supports Donald Trump, but because he was stupid enough to be taken in by this scam, essentially.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of the True Social stock, now it has rebounded a little bit as of the time we're recording this.
Really?
Still has not gotten back up over its starting price. looked earlier, it's at about $47 a share as of the time we're recording this. I think it was in the low 30s, high 20s at its low point.
Right.
But this BF Bogers accounting firm that
Exactly.
works with the SEC came out, and it's the same firm that Donald Trump and Trump media used for this. They got kicked out of the SEC. Basically, we're told we can't rely on your financials. Everything you do is a sham. Their uh, their owner got hit with $14 million in fines because all their paperwork is bogus. And that's the firm Donald Trump used. I did a TikTok about it that I haven't posted yet. It'll be up by the time this podcast posts. But I said, so they're going to have to get a different accounting firm. What's the other accounting firm going to come up with? We already saw the statement that said they lost $58 million last year, only brought in 40 or four. Now, if those numbers were wrong, how bad are the real numbers?
Well, exactly. And here's something to consider. When I've heard the story, they've come out and said, yeah, it is True Social or DJT's accounting firm. But this accounting firm has a lot of other accounts too. So we don't know for sure if the problem is with regards to Donald Trump's account. But here's a little hint. Remember when they were back going through his taxes and such, and he had this big accounting firm called Mazars that was handling all his business
Mm-hmm.
accounts. And then they fired Donald Trump as a client. And why? Because they couldn't trust the documentation. They couldn't say that this was all legit. They did it before they got called out on it. So if Mazars, which is a big, well known, well respected accounting firm, has said, we don't even know if anything is right. Get them the fuck out of here. And now this other accounting firm, Borgers, for True Social and a bunch of other clients, you got to think that these two things are tied. Most people don't get that crazy about their accounting. This is a Donald Trump thing.
Well, now this could be. I'm going to give Donald Trump just a hint of doubt, a benefit of the doubt here, and it could be that this accounting company was just that shady, and
True.
they were doing this thing with everybody. Like it couldn't. Maybe it's not just a Donald Trump thing. That they could be that shady that they were doing it with every company. But I think Donald Trump found them because they were that shady.
Yeah.
I think they're connected. I mean, I don't think it's they became shady just because of Donald Trump. The benefit I'm saying is they already were shady, and Donald Trump said, I like that. Let's use them.
That's my kind of guy. Yeah. 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 That's distinctly possible. I mean, they got to go. It's like when you're doctor shopping for prescriptions, you need to find somebody that's willing to fudge a little bit to get you the prescriptions you wouldn't normally get. And presumably, it's the same thing for shady accountants. Yeah, you have to understand our accounting system is a little different. What we do is we put whatever we want on there and we cover our ass by putting a disclaimer on there saying this may not be accurate. What's the point of doing the document? What's the point of doing the taxes if you're going to put that disclaimer on it? And as far as I know, putting that disclaimer on it doesn't set you free from the guilt of lying on official documents, bank documents.
Well, exactly. And this disclaimer, it doesn't do anything. It just says, hey, you can't rely on them. But now here's my question. He puts all these, he's known for putting false documents together. Then Truth Social comes out and, potentially the false documents from this accounting company, if they are false, what's the point of putting out a false document saying you lost $58 million and only brought in four? If you're going to
Yeah,
put out false documents, at least do what he's done in his other businesses and make it look good.
right, right, exactly. And that's the interesting point that you make. The accounting firm for DJT or Trump True Social came out with that information of losing $58 million and only making back $4 million. And now we find out they're fucking liars and they're gaslighters. So maybe 58 was 158. We'll just drop the one or something. I mean, we really don't know how bad a shape that the true social stock is. And if something comes out that it's worse than we thought, that fucker's dropping through the hole.
I mean, there's a chance by the time this airs that that bombshell has dropped, and that stock could be $10, $15,
Yeah,
10 cents. Who knows?
yeah,
If
exactly.
if you if you were anywhere on the market, it was actually they lost 158 million or 258 million or whatever that number is. That stock is going to tank and take quickly as everybody's going to abandon it.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, there is no hope. There is no redemption for that stock. Even if it comes up a little bit, ultimately it's going to go down the shitter. There's nothing behind it. It is just a GameStop thing. It might go up and down, it may go real high, but in the end, it can't win. You know, it's like a pyramid scheme. You get in early, you make your money, you get the fuck out. But there's all those other people like this guy that lost a 500,000 that are going to get their asses kicked. These people that succeeded and made all this money, that money had to come from somewhere, and it came from the little guys who invested later.
Yeah, I was watching something about it. They were talking about this stock, and they said at some point here, and I don't know when the date is, there's going to come a date when Donald Trump can pledge this as collateral against a loan, the stock.
Yeah,
And what they'll do, what this is how they think it's going to happen, is Donald Trump will get, $1 billion, $500 million, whatever that number is. He'll get a loan that he never intends to pay back. So he'll
right.
default on the loan. But in the meantime, this bank will have this stock, and then they will go out and take out whatever the short sell thing is, where you're gambling that it's going to drop
Right.
and you're betting against the stock, so you hope it fails. And then it's going to go, the stock's going to go in the shitter. They're going to make a ton of money, way more than what they took as collateral for all this stock. And they're going to walk out smelling like a rose. Donald Trump is going to get a little bit of money for this loan that he never paid back. And everybody else is going to be left holding the bag.
Yeah. You know, the thing about it is, though, I don't know that he'll get a loan on this stuff. Maybe he will based on what you're suggesting. But we know prior to all this other bullshit that's going on, nobody wanted to do business with him. There was a point when only Deutsche Bank was willing to deal with him, and they got scared off and they said, fuck you, we don't want anything to do with you. Um, he doesn't have any banks that really want to work with him. And, with the prospect of being a convicted felon, I'm sure that's a drawback to getting loans.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the the thing I saw didn't say this. This is just what I'm thinking about it, but I bet you it's going to be the thing where they say he's got 2 billion or $3 billion worth of stock right now. It'd probably be the thing where, yeah, yeah, Donnie, we'll give you like 30 million for that $3 billion worth of stock. It's going to be pennies on the dollar at best. So he gets a pittance of what it's really worth, and then they bet against it and make two, three, four times of what he pledged, and the bank's going to get like a huge return. That's the only way I see them even considering it. They're not going to do it for even money by any means. Like they're not going to do it if they can only make double money or 50% return or something like that. Now they're going to have to make a fortune if they even risk being in business with them, knowing he's going to default.
Well, the SEC is kind of the wild card here. We just heard about this accounting firm that's in all kinds of trouble because of the phony documents and stuff. And just as this was starting out to become an IPO, there was two people, I think, within the 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 main company that was behind this IPO with Donald Trump, and they ended up admitting to like 15, 20 crimes prior to the IPO being issued. I have to think the SEC is crawling all over this stock. We haven't heard about it yet, but the idea that the SEC doesn't up with some violations in Donald Trump's stock seems unlikely. There's going to be some legal problems with Donald Trump's position in the stock and the stock itself. Ultimately, it's got to come.
Oh, I bet. I mean, there's got to, we already heard that he tried forcing his two partners out. And, you said there's a 15, 20 crimes from a couple of guys early on. Like, it's going to be big. There's going to be some fallout. I don't know if Donald Trump himself will get any crimes and any charges, but there's no way this goes unscathed because
No.
the whole thing reeked of money laundering.
Well, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I saw somebody online on TikTok reading off all the things that Donald Trump has gone through over his career, the various crimes and lawsuits and stuff. And he's been called out for money laundering multiple times over the last several decades. I mean, this is just a standard practice for Donald. Money laundering. And we've said that all along. He's got all these buildings, many of which he hasn't built, somebody else's built, and he's tacked his name onto it, or even Trump Tower. He's got Russian money coming in and out of his business all over the place. And the Russians, they're fucking laundering money, and he's perfectly willing to let them do that. This is something that's been rampant with Donald Trump for decades. That's how he's run his business, laundering money for Russia.
Well, not even just Russia. They even did it just within the Trump family. I've talked about it before.
Yeah,
There was at one point he needed $5 million from his daddy, and they didn't want the IRS to be involved with it. So daddy paid somebody a pittance, drive the $5 million down to Trump Taj Mahal, go into the high limit room, cash $5 million in chips, place no bets, and leave.
right, right.
You know, because they got and they skated the IRS doing that. This has been That's something he learned from his dad.
Yeah.
This has been going on for a couple generations at this point.
And I think the impressive thing with Donald Trump is that he's been successful with it for years. For whatever reason, the DOJ or the attorney generals in the state of New York have pretty much allowed him to get away with things, and they knew it was happening, whether it had to be with taxes, state or federal, and just the behavior with business loans and insurance and inflating. He's been inflating the prices of his properties for years and then deflating them to pay less taxes. This is this isn't new. And you'll hear people in New York say, "Oh my God, everybody does that. People will be leaving New York if we can't do that." And what they're talking about is doing things that are technically illegal. It's in New York with this real estate barons and such. They all do this shit. It just so happens Donald Trump is the highest profile, and he's done so much negative shit. They're gonna make a an example out of him, but he's done this for years. I don't know if he knows how to run a business without being unethical.
I would say he does not.
No,
Um, as far as him doing it for years and getting away with it, here's what I think. The he was doing it for years, but he was small potatoes in a way. He was the billionaire who wasn't a billionaire. I think they saw through the smoke and mirrors a bit and realized he wasn't as high profile as he made himself out to be. So they let him go, let him play pretend, knowing that they all the time they had this in their back pocket should he get out of line. And then, as we've talked about, he fell ass backwards into the presidency,
right. Well,
and then
yeah,
escalated it from there. I
I,
think if he would have just stayed at a business, stayed in business, stayed doing the small shit he was doing, because he was mostly out of the real estate game by the time he ran
right.
for president. He was just kind of milking things along the way it had been going, and they knew eventually it was going to collapse around him, and he'd be done in by his own efforts. So they didn't feel the need to go after him until he, upped his value basically by running for the presidency and thumbing his nose at everybody.
I think his position in business was similar to his position in government. He wasn't really smart enough to be a kingpin, but he was a useful idiot, both in the real estate business because he had a high profile. They could use him to do things, and this is why they're laundering money and doing all this stuff. But the same could be said while he was in government. Um, I said this when he came in. I don't think he came in as necessarily an evil person, a bad person, but not a evil person. But the people who did have evil intentions figured out very quickly how to manipulate him. And they did, just like the Russians did, just like the Saudi Arabians did, just like corporate America in New York did. Everybody figured out, okay, this guy's kind of a show pony. He doesn't really have any substance, but we can use that to our benefit. Donald Trump has to be one of the most used humans in the history of this country.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, he never had a real policy on anything. He ran for he it was the first time the Republicans had no planks of for their party
Right,
going, at a convention. They had nothing that they were planning to do because he didn't have anything. If
right.
they would have come to him and said, "Hey, your supporters and the voters, your voters and everybody would think you're a winner if we back codifying Roe would have been codified.
Yeah,
If they would
absolutely.
if they would have told him, you'd have been a hero for middle America and everybody would love you and you'd go down as the best president in history if you'd go to a $30 an hour minimum wage.
He would have
He'd have
done it.
done it.
Absolutely.
It didn't matter. He didn't care about the what he was doing. He only cared that the choices he was making would make him look good.
Right.
And the
Exactly.
people around him used that, and he couldn't run as a Democrat
Right.
because he knew the Democrats were smart enough to see through his bullshit. They wouldn't fall for it. Like he said on the campaign trail, he loves the poorly educated.
Absolutely.
I think that's
Absolutely.
one of the few smart things he has ever said. It was completely true and an insult to his voters, but he it was smart for him. He knew that that's where his bread and butter lay.
Well, he does have some intellectual level as far as how to manipulate and con and do all that stuff. He does have some abilities with regards to that. Eric, I tell you what, we are going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Listener Eric is with us. He's a regular guest on the program. He's a blue dot in Iowa. Um, I was going to ask you about Iowa. I just heard about something that caught my attention. Not going to cause me to move down there. Was there a bill that was just passed in Iowa that exempted retirement income from state tax in Iowa? Did that just happen?
Now, now, I haven't heard it, but I'll be honest, I've been so busy focused on some of the national news that I might have missed it.
Well, and you aren't close to retirement as I am, so it wouldn't necessarily catch your attention if it came through. Uh,
Unfortunately, no, I wish I was.
yeah, I don't think it would draw me to move to Iowa. Actually, there's some very nice places in Iowa. I do like Okoboji. I like Dubuque. There's a lot of nice places. Cedar Falls. I like those places. I've been in some shithole places in Iowa too, but of course there's some shithole places in Minnesota. Um, as we're recording this, we're going into the weekend right after Hope Hicks testified. By the time people hear this, we're not sure who will be the witnesses on the stand, but we know that Stormy Daniels is coming up. We know that Michael Cohen is coming up. Um, and since this case has started, everybody on the defense side have just been pounding on Michael Cohen. I think they're most fearful of him because of his connection and his part in this whole crime that Donald Trump and Michael Cohen committed together. They're trying to discredit him, but I, I don't get it because Michael Cohen has already discredited himself so many times that how can you make it any worse? The thing that they're doing when they talk to the Hope Hicks and Donald Trump's assistant and all this stuff. They're just trying to corroborate everything. So even though people might say Michael Cohen is a liar, when it's been corroborated by three or four people, it's got to be real. So they're covering their ass there.
I think in part because the attorneys, they're not able to play to their strengths. They're not able to do the things that would be required that they would normally do for any other defendant. um, somebody of Donald Trump's age and personality might normally come out with say they might say, well, he's mentally infirm, not able to stand trial, or something like that, or to try to do something. But Donald Trump won't let them talk bad about his character
Yeah.
at all. Um, and they got to be very limited because Donald Trump will tell them what to do, and if they don't follow his advice, he's going to bark at them and what have you. So they have to go after Cohen because that's what Dottie wants. Dottie somehow thinks that Michael Cohen's the key to all of this, and if they can somehow sink Cohen, it sinks the whole case. Because I don't think Donnie's smart enough to understand the severity of everything compounding on him.
Well, the thing about the case is, for what I know about it from the reports coming out of it, from the transcripts, and from just the reports as to what's been going on, I don't know if Donald Trump is completely sunk yet, but he's pretty fucking close. I mean, this has been a good run for the prosecution since the start of this trial. It's not gone well for Donald Trump, and it's gone very well for the prosecution. If he still thinks he has a hope, the guy's delusional.
Well, we know he's delusional, but no, it has not gone well at all. I mean, you've got them calling it legal fees. You've got Donald Trump's comment, which is going to come back to bite him. They're going to bring it up if he testifies, or at some point they're going to find a way to bring it into evidence of him saying outside the courtroom. The clip you talked about, where he says, "Well, I didn't even deduct those fees from my taxes."
Right,
Um, you know, it's not going well. You have there was a recording
right.
that was on Michael Cohen's phone where Michael Cohen talked to Donald Trump. I did a TikTok on that recording. You don't hear Donald Trump say, "Well, no, don't do that for me. Why would you do that for me? That was a bad idea." You don't hear him, nay-naying it or telling him to not do it or any of that. You hear, he was at least appreciative or understanding or something. His willingness was at least implied, if not direct, that this was a good thing in that recording. You have them going out and on Michael Cohen's phone, they had the Signal app, the encrypted text app. Well, I have never needed to send an encrypted text to anybody in my life.
No, no, I have
Most
not either.
people probably have never done that, had probably never heard of that app before. Why would you need to encrypt your text message? What are you talking about? This was before he was president, so it wasn't like they were talking national security stuff.
Right, right. Well,
And who are you trying to hide it from? Like, there's a lot going on there. And Michael Cohen wiped his phone.
yeah,
It got restored because he did something stupid with it. He connected it to a laptop that replaced everything because of some setting he had on it. But
yeah,
like, those aren't the actions of a normal, sane, non-law breaking person.
right. I've had people come to my comment section on TikTok and say, and these are Democrats, they'll say, "Oh, he'll never get convicted of anything." And I always ask them, based on what? What tells you that he's not going to get convicted? And they don't really have anything other than, "I just feel that way," and he gets away with everything, which isn't true because he's gone through some shit at this point. But we get people who just want to pout and don't think he's going to get convicted. I have a hard time imagining a guy in this position with the way the trial's been going and 34 felony charges that he's not going to get convicted. I feel pretty confident in betting the house that he's going to get convicted of multiple crimes. There's no question about it. He can't avoid it.
Oh, I'd agree with you. And on top of it, you have Donald Trump is going to go to prison, but these same people, he'll get convicted. They'll come back. Well, he's never going to see a day in jail. Well, then he'll go to prison, and then he's sitting in a jail cell. Well, he's going to win the presidency and get pardoned or something
Yeah.
stupid. Like, they will, until he's a corpse in the ground, they are not going to say They're going to keep finding the next thing that he's going to be able to somehow magically get out of it by, because
Even,
they're not going to be happy until he is so far gone that there's no chance, and then they'll be on to the next person and the next threat and doing
well,
the same worrying again.
I will push back on that a little bit, and you'll say when he's dead and gone, that'll be the only time they stop. With these conspiracy theorists, when he's dead and gone, they're going to start saying he's not really dead. This is just a ploy that Donald Trump did. He's going to come skipping back into D.C. holding hands with JFK Jr. They're going to take over the fucking world. I guarantee you, somebody will come up with that shit.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it won't be a right wing Trump humper. It'll be somebody on the left who's just that worried about the damage that Donald Trump has already done and could do again if he's back.
Yeah,
And I mean, we laugh at the Trump humpers who say that stuff. I mean, couple of, what was it, 6 months, no, year ago or so, when they all went to Dealey Plaza because JFK was supposed to be coming back. We were laughing at them. And before long, our side is going to be the ones thinking this nutso stuff because they have terrified themselves about this boogeyman who
yeah.
really isn't that scary. He's a joke.
Yeah, he is a joke. He is a joke. And one of the things that people worry a lot about is uh, these trials being pushed back beyond the election. I personally think that what's happening in the Manhattan district, which will be done well before the election, is enough to finish the job for Donald Trump, to take him out of the narrative, to take him out of any real contention for president of the United States. He's going to lose a lot in this. And if these other trials don't happen until after the election, I almost don't even care. Do you get that same sense that this is enough to, I mean, he's weakened and multiple
Oh, I think it's
convictions.
more than enough.
Yeah.
I think this trial alone is more than enough on multiple levels.
Yeah.
I mean, first you have 25% of respondents to one poll I read. It was a poll that said like 67% of Americans think Donald Trump is being treated differently than any other criminal defendant. And it went to both sides. Some said he was being treated worse, some said he was being treated better. But
Right.
25% of respondents to that poll said, and they were Republican respondents said they would not vote for him if he gets convicted of a felony. Well, he can't win without all Republicans and a bunch of independents. If he loses 25%, he's done. This
Yeah.
conviction kicks him out of the thing. On top of it, his fundraising's already, in the shitter. He can barely fundraise. The RNC's not getting any money in. He's begging down ballot candidates to tithe him 5 to 10% or better, all for a potential favorable endorsement or something.
Well,
I
and
mean,
if
he's not drawing in the money.
if you need
And if
a
he gets
red flag,
convicted, he's not going to get any money.
and if you need a red flag even before he's become convicted, what was it? The Pennsylvania primary? He got 84% of the vote. Nikki Haley got 15% of the vote, and she's not even in the fucking race. These are people that just refuse to vote for Donald Trump. And unless he gets the whole Republican Party behind him and some independents, he can't win the race.
Right. I mean, there is a chance that those Republican voters that voted for Haley in the primary are kind of like what we are seeing with it's a protest thing. Well, we're just trying to send a
True.
message to,
True.
you know, and we'll still vote for him in the election. It's possible, but it's not a good look. It's not a good sign when he's not getting 95% of the vote like Joe Biden. Um, then you add the fundraising, and then the polls saying 25% of Republicans aren't going to vote for him if he's convicted. You know, all of it combined is not a good thing for Donald Trump. I think unless he skates on all of the charges, and I don't think he will.
I know he
I
won't.
don't
He
think
can't.
he's going to. I don't think there's any way this trial is going to sink him. Hell, just getting convicted, even if he doesn't see a day in prison, the coverage of this trial and the fact that he would have to have, you know, that he would be a convicted felon will sink him to the point where there is nothing he can do.
Right.
But the best thing for Republicans would be for him to be go from being convicted to immediately held in prison, so they are forced to potentially get somebody else
Right.
because
Right.
he will not drop out unless they force him out. And with Laura, was it Laura Trump on
Yeah. The
the head of the
RNC.
RNC, that they won't kick him out. She won't do it, even if he's convicted. So they're going to be forced to be stuck having the head of their party running the top of their ticket from a convicted spot, and they might even still try to run him from a jail cell.
Well, the problem RNC has, or the Republican Party in general has, with Donald Trump potentially not being the nominee, and as I've said, people say, "How do you think he's going to get dumped?" I think if he's not the nominee, it's going to be a physical or emotional breakdown where he's just not capable of running anymore. That's what I think is going to happen. I do hope he is the nominee because that puts us in a better position as Democrats. He's going to be easy to beat. But the Republicans have a problem. Republicans, the smart ones, the one or two that have a brain, they know that they have to embrace Donald Trump, even though they know he's going to lose, because the people that follow him are such a cult. If he is not the nominee, they're going to be mad at everybody and they just won't come out and vote. So, all those votes they need for senators and representatives and legislators and governors, they won't be there for the vote. They're not holding on to Donald Trump because they think he can win. They're holding on to Donald Trump to get the dumb fucks out to vote for the down ballot fucking candidates.
You might be right. I said before the primaries ever began, I expected there to be a sacrificial candidate this presidential term.
Yeah.
I will admit, I think I was wrong. Unless they are forced out to not run Donald Trump, should he make it all the way, he might be the sacrificial candidate this term.
Oh, no question. But I think they will do everything they can to prop him up if they can get away
Oh
with it.
yeah,
It'll
yeah,
be
but
it'll
I think they know that he's not going to win. I think if you could somehow pull a war room of them together where Donald Trump would never hear it, and you could ask him, off the far off the record, and just say, "Look, honestly, do you think he can win?" I think most of them would say no. If
oh,
you could get him in that perfect scenario.
yeah, if you could get them to answer honestly, they aren't going to admit that he can win because anybody with half a brain can see that it just doesn't line up. It's like that thing I've always said. People always say, I think Donald Trump's going to win. Well, please tell me what's happened between 2020 and now where he's gained $7 million and then, or 7 million votes and then some to win the race. There's been nothing he's done to increase support. Just look at the fundraising. That tells you everything. How did he fundraise going into 2020 and how is he fundraising now? That to me is the pure essence of support is fundraising. It's not polls that we don't know where they come from. If you are popular, you're going to do well fundraising.
Yes, but I would caveat that just slightly.
Okay.
It's not just about the fundraising dollars. It's where, how much of it is small dollar contributors.
Yeah. Yeah,
And I
exactly.
think Joe Biden is still beating Donald Trump. If you go just small dollar donations, I think Joe Biden's still beating Donald Trump with how much he's getting from the grassroots movement. It's because, some of the Republican donors have some pretty deep pockets.
True.
He could out fundraise Joe Biden's in sometimes by, just one donor dropping a lot of money.
Right.
But Joe Biden's pulling in a lot of grassroots money. You're also seeing a lot of grassroots, you know, campaigning, and you're still hearing about him out doing things, uh, and organizing at the lower levels. You're not hearing that out of the Republicans. They're not doing as much um, to get people excited or whatever. You just have the rallies from Trump and his little bit. mini campaign speeches outside the courtroom where he's talking to the same crowd. He's saying the same stuff he's been saying for 7 years now. It's not hitting, and his messaging is off too.
Right. Right. Well, yeah,
Sounds like a
there
bunch of whining.
it does sound like a bunch of whining, and the number I heard as far as small donors for Joe Biden is 96%, which is substantial. And Donald Trump, we don't know what his small donors are, but they aren't as much as that. And for those folks that don't understand what we're talking about, the reason the small donors makes a difference is that all the small donors represent more votes. I mean, if Joe Biden gets a $500 million with millions of donors, or Donald Trump gets a full $1 billion from three donors, you can see how the money's nice, but that doesn't transfer into or translate into votes. It's just money. So the money, you're absolutely right. The money has a bearing to an extent, but it really has to do with where that money is coming from.
Yeah, exactly. And um, I think the part of the reason why Donald Trump's not getting the small donations anymore is he's grifting at every turn.
Yeah, he's
He's
drained
selling
them.
Bible. He's selling them Bibles. He's selling them tennis shoes. When he got hit with the gag order violation for 9,000, he sent out a fundraising email because of it, trying to get them. No, just give whatever you can. Like I said, he was saying to all the down ballot candidates, "Well, you use my name and likeness. Give me 5% of that." So now everybody who donates to those down ballots are thinking, "Oh shit, if I give my $20, Donald Trump's getting a buck. Do I really want to give that 20? Maybe he does. Maybe they don't send that 20 anymore.
Right.
It's he's bleeding them at every opportunity. So those small dollar donors don't have the extra $20, whereas the Democrats, they're not getting bled dry left and right, and they're more willing to throw 10, 20, $30 at a candidate.
Well, and I think with the Democratic Party, the people that are soundly behind Joe Biden, um, there's a lot of what we saw in 2020. There's fear. I mean, they're under the impression that if Donald Trump gets to be the president, our democracy is gone. We're under a dictatorship. And Democrats are fearful of that. And that is a motivator to get people out and vote and to send money in. I hate to see that, but I understand it. And it is a factor. There's no question.
I mean, it is a fear. I don't think it's a very it is a possibility. I just don't think it's a very high possibility.
No, I
Um,
don't either.
I mean, it would take the perfect storm of circumstances, and I mean, it would need a big storm of circumstances to go out to undermine Joe Biden at this point. But the fear is a huge thing because Donald Trump has pretty much said as much. If he gets elected again, he is going to do everything he can to become a dictator.
Yeah. Well, he's also playing the same game he played in 2016 and 2020. He's prefacing the election by saying, I'll stand by it if it's honest and it's good, but if it's dirty and a hoax and a fake and all that stuff, I'm not going to commit to accepting it." And he does that to give him some coverage. He thought he might lose in 2016. So if he had lost in 2016, he would be able to say, "See, I told you it was a hoax." He didn't have to do that in 2016, but he did it in 2020, and he needed it because he got his ass kicked. And he knows he's going to get his ass kicked in 2024. So he's already saying, "Yeah, I'm not going to accept it if it's not legal, if it's not ethical and honest." And what that means, what that translates into is if I don't win, I'm going to bitch. And I think we can count on that, except Donald Trump is a different person, a different candidate than he was in 2020. He's much weaker. He doesn't have as much support. And when he starts complaining after 2024's election, people are going to start laughing at him, even his own people, because it's going to be ridiculous.
Oh, it's going to be ridiculous. The other thing is, well, he has it now, but he doesn't use it. Is Twitter.
Yeah.
He had however many million followers on, was it 100 million followers, something like that, 200 million followers on
Yeah.
Twitter,
Yeah.
maybe even more, you know, because people were following him to see what stupid shit he says. Well, now he's on Truth Social, and there's reports there's only 500,000 people on Truth Social. Sure, it gets picked up by the media when he says stupid shit, but that doesn't have the effect of the immediate hit, like getting it from him on your Twitter feed,
Well,
would have.
well, the funny thing is that he's not on Twitter, um, even though Elon Musk has let him back on. And the reason why he's not on Twitter, he's probably legally obligated to stay only on True Social, because that would be a death knell for True Social. If you went over to Twitter and Donald Trump's, he's like a dog seeing a squirrel or a shiny object. Once he got more attention over to Twitter, that's where he would take all his time, and he wouldn't think twice about abandoning or at least lightening up on True Social. So they force him to stay on True Social, thinking that's going to do some good. But as you pointed out, the amount of users is so small, it's ridiculous. It's what do you say, in a half a million, maybe six hundred
Uh,
thousand?
that's what I heard. I want to say that's what somebody said, was like 500,000.
I've heard that too, and just to quantify that, I have 340,000, 330,000 people on TikTok. Um, uh, Tom Tom Powell has over a million just on TikTok. He's already got more than Donald Trump. So the impact that Donald Trump is having in real effects through social media is not that impactful. But like you said, and somebody else has brought up, the fact is that the media picks up everything he says, so his words get spread far and wide to a great deal. And and this is what I've complained about all the time. This is what I complained about in 2016 and 2020. The left side media is responsible for a lot of the damage Donald Trump did to this country. They put him out there, they gave him credibility, and they gave him exposure. And I think to a large degree, that's why we are where we are, because the media did not push back against him.
Oh, I agree. We've talked about that numerous times. The media is responsible for Donald Trump. They're still responsible for Donald Trump because he's good for ratings,
Right.
and they're trying to keep that same fire going. You know, I mean, CNN, yes, they're covering the downsides for Donald Trump, but every now and then I still see an opinion piece or an analysis as to, oh well, this could be bad, this could be bad, and this could blow a case wide open and give Donald Trump a win because that's good for ratings for him. They were saying something with the Weinstein case about how that got finally overturned and he's getting a new trial or whatever because of some decision Judge Marchand said in that. Well, if he doesn't reverse his decision, this is the same thing as the Weinstein case, and he'll get overturned on appeal. And it's like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, you're giving me a headache just watching you bend over backward so you have some sort of a scare message. Just take the win that he's gonna, that this is going horribly for him.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing about it is there's something we know for certain with the media and with people in general in this country. They love to build somebody up. They love to rise them to a certain level. But there comes that tipping point when he starts an ascent or a descent, and then they fucking pile on and they bury him. And that's coming for Donald Trump, when all the media and all the people will just bury, cancel, whatever the fuck they do to him. That moment in time is coming. And then all the people that said he's going to rise from the ashes are just going to see that's crazy. It's not going to happen. He will get buried by the media, by the bulk of the people, and then nobody will be afraid of him.
I've got a funny feeling it's going to be one of two instances.
What's
It's
that?
going to be moments after we hear those words that we've been waiting to hear. We, the jury, find Donald Trump guilty. It's either going
Yeah.
to be that, or it's going to be the night when, whatever, whether it's night of, day after, 2 days after, when the decision desk comes in November with we are declaring the 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 election for Joe Biden. It's going to
Absolutely.
be one of the two.
Yeah.
Unless something big happens with his mental health or his physical health or something in between, where he just kind of drops off into obscurity, one of those two will be the night the media turns on him.
Well, and with him mentally and physically, I'm believing that at some point something's going to happen that is an embarrassment for him that he just can't recover from. Like he keels over, like he just loses his mind for a half hour and just talking gibberish, which I think is all possible. There's going to come that moment in time when even his biggest supporters say, "Oh, fuck, what about that?" They're all going to turn on him. There's no question about it. They're all going to turn on him. It's just a matter of when and what's going to trigger it.
You're right. I'm thinking a couple of instances of it where it might happen. Um, Potentially when Stormy Daniels testifies in this case,
Yeah, I'm
or
interested in
Karen
that one.
McDougal, because either one of them they'll be testifying about. And it wouldn't surprise me if they ask either one of them or both questions about Donald Trump's uh, least favorable appendage as part of um, this procedure.
Donald
It,
Trump's little shiitake.
yeah, and you know that's going to embarrass the shit out of him, or how he was in bed or whatever, and that's going to those kind of questions are going to embarrass the shit out of him. Maybe literally. Um,
Well,
that's entirely possible.
well,
If the shit literally gets embarrassed out of him and he shits his diaper to the point where they can't even hide it. They have where it's something they have to come in and clean up during this proceeding.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. That's something like that.
like something like that, or if he is stupid enough, and we know he is stupid enough, but if his attorneys or somebody can't get through to him, and he tries or does take the stand for his own defense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you talk about Karen McDougal or you talk about Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal is a little more sophisticated. And I'm not trying to talk trash about Stormy Daniels, but she's not a sophisticated lady. I mean, she went into this trying to make money, and I don't fault her for doing that. But she's the kind of woman that will say pretty much anything. And that's the person I think Donald Trump will sit there and he will just have too much and he'll have to respond. And it'll get him in trouble with the judge and in court and all this stuff. But I think that's where the shit show ensues when he gets so riled up. He's so reactionary. He's so emotional. He won't be able to hold back. And then there will be this complete shit show in court. I think that's going to have a significant impact. And I think it's coming, unless they just drug him so far, so much that he can't talk. And I think they may be doing that right now. They're giving him some kind of sedative to keep him calm and keep him sitting still.
They might have to, and I don't know. Like if he has a straight outburst where he just loses his mind for half an hour or whatever, even though I'm guessing the judge will tell the jury to try to disregard whatever he said because it was out of turn and out of line and everything, they're not going to be able to forget that. Once you've
Yeah.
seen it, you can say I can disregard it, but you're not going to be able to forget it. And even if you ignore whatever he says, the image of him having this meltdown is going to
Right.
be ringing in the back of your head as they're going over the evidence, going, he's like that because of this. You calm, normal people who are innocent don't react like that to lies.
Right. Well, I think he's already got a problem with the jury. Some of the reporters that have been in there have said the jury, when they walk in and they walk out and they sit in the jury box, none of them look at Donald Trump. None of them. And it's what I told Ed, yesterday, and I've talked about before, when you get a guy of that personality from a distance, he's cool. But when you're sitting up close and you see how he behaves 8 hours a day without any breaks or any significant breaks, it's hard not to hate a motherfucker like this because he's selfish, he's self centered, he's arrogant, he's childish, he's a dick. And people just aren't going to relate to that. Him sitting there and just reacting and doing what he does in court is going to do more damage to that jury than the prosecution can do. I'm convinced of that.
Oh, without a doubt. But they're going to look at it, and like I said, they're going to be looking at a normal, sane, innocent person would not have the outbursts and the reactions and the act the way he does, especially when he loses his shit. Whatever this happens, and he has the big meltdown, they are going to be remembering that and going, he wouldn't be acting like that if this stuff wasn't true. It's all hitting him, and they're going to draw that conclusion, and it's going to give credibility to all of the evidence and the witnesses that they've heard.
Well, and that is the true essence of a narcissist, having had experiences with them. When you get them cornered and you confront them with things they can't divert, distract, or delay, or whatever they want to do, when they can't do that, there's only one reaction they have, and that is losing their shit because they figure if they can get crazy and be the bully, that you'll stop doing what they don't like you doing. That won't work in court, but there will come a point when Donald Trump just sees no way out and he will just freak out. That's just part and parcel to who narcissists are.
Yeah, I think you're right. And at that point, he will probably be watching the rest of the trial from a separate room. But he will have lost the jury. It would almost guarantee his conviction. And then at some point, he's not going to be our problem because he will be in a cell.
Or a sanitarium or a psycho ward. I really think, these people, narcissists and people like Donald Trump, are already mentally ill.
Oh, yes.
They're just able to control it enough to stay in the mainstream, but they're not that far from being just fucking berserk. And it could drive Donald Trump to that extent.
Oh, I think you're right. And maybe he does end up instead of a um like a full on prison. I know some prisons have like a mental institution ward where those that have been convicted end up. You're still on lockdown. You're still on, you're not free to go, and he could have to serve his time in a situation like that. It's
Yeah.
very possible. Um, but either way, it's not going to be good for him. But he won't be out with the general populace. He won't be able to, he might be able to finish out running for this presidency, but he'll be out of the public sphere. He won't have his Twitter account. He won't have his Truth Social. He won't have the call-in radio or the call-in talk shows. Um, and he won't have the news coverage because once he's in one of those facilities, the media won't have access to him. They're going to quit talking about it
Right.
in
Right.
pretty short order.
Well, yeah, and there are people who come to my page all the time and they complain about Donald Trump and they will not be happy until he's handcuffed and thrown in jail. They feel that's the only way we can win this thing, and it has to be soon. As far as I'm concerned, with regards to this trial and the money situation and the evidence being exposed, I don't really care what happens to Donald Trump, whether he's locked in Mar-a-Lago, whether he's in jail, or whether he's just a broken man. As long as he's taken out of the narrative of all this, as long as his power is gone, that's all I care about. Because after the election, if they have these other trials, that will bury him. Those will definitely put him in jail, and it'll ensure the rest of his life is completely miserable. I just want him out of the narrative so he doesn't have any power with Republicans or anybody else going into the 2024 after the election. We got to get his mouth shut down, his people back under their rocks, so we can try to start rebuilding what he's destroyed.
Yeah, you're right. And we talked before about how Trump fucks are going to go back under their, in their corner and stuff and kind of hide.
They already are. I've noticed
Oh,
some
yeah.
I know.
Well, I noticed something tonight before we did the podcast that I hadn't noticed before. Now, I got a neighbor behind me,
Mhm.
and we share an alley, and he's got his garage in the alley, and I've never really paid too much attention. But I've been around that block numerous times, and I've never seen a Trump sign in front of his house. I've never seen a Trump flag in front of his house or anything like that. Well, he had his garage door up. What did I see hanging on his garage door wall or his garage wall? Big Trump flag. I mean, huge. But he's got a flagpole in front of in his front yard. It's not
Wow.
hanging on there. He's already got it hidden back in his garage. And I've never met the man, so I don't know anything about him. I just I know where he lives, and I've been around and seen in the front of his house. So
Wow.
from all appearances, I don't see any Trump stuff, but he's got it buried back in it, still hanging prominently in that garage.
Wow.
They're going back under their rocks a little bit.
Yeah, they are. It's, and that's why they were under the rocks in the first place, because it was unpopular to say the things and think the things they did. And then Donald Trump comes along and makes it cool to say that stuff. Now that Donald Trump is being marginalized, it's making it tougher for them to say the shit they want to say.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know if it was ever necessarily cool to say the stuff that they were saying, but he made it acceptable because he was in the position he was in. A lot of them looked at it because he was in the presidency and said, "Yeah, the president's on our side," and they looked with such reverence to that office that it gave a lot of weight. And Donald Trump never cared for that office. He didn't care about being president.
No.
He cared about being president only in the fact that it made him $400,000 a year. He got a grift money from at Mar-a-Lago for charging the Secret Service for rooms. He got free food. He got a place to live, and people were talking about him, and it fed his ego as being somebody important.
Right.
But as far as
Right.
doing the job of being president, he never cared.
No, no, he didn't. He never cared at all. Well, Eric, we're going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for coming on and helping me out during this week that I'm kind of bouncing around. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And of course, we'll talk to you again sometime soon. But I know you'll be watching what's going on with the trial, and you'll continue doing your TikToks. And just so folks know, check for Eric on TikTok at Analytical Iowan. And you can find him on YouTube as well. So there's plenty of opportunity for you to find him. So be sure to check him out because he's talking some good shit. If you like him here, you'll like him on TikTok and YouTube as well.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, you can find me on TikTok and YouTube at Analytical Iowan. I do try to post the exact same videos from TikTok to YouTube. I know I've missed a few, but I do try to get them all posted. Maybe not always at the same time. So, but I do try to get them up at both places. So, catch me one or catch me the other. You're going to see almost everything I do one way or another.
Right, right, exactly. All right. Well, I appreciate it. For the folks listening, thank you for taking the time out of your day to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.